and welcome to another chess video. Today I want to discuss what to do when you are in time trouble and you have a winning position. Those are some of the hardest positions to play because you feel the pressure. And when you feel the pressure is a really good chance you're going to lose because you're not focused on the checkmate. So this is also what makes a strong player. E4, E5, Knight C3. This is the Vienna opening. It's a very flexible opening where white plays a move that doesn't fix him into a main line just yet, like the Ruy Lopez or the King's Gambit. So I would highly recommend playing this. Alexander Alekhine loved this, but after knight f6, bishop c4, knight takes e4, it is something that he stayed away from. Although after knight f6, I would probably play f4 and then d5, and we have a normal game. I don't mind playing this right now. So knight c6, bishop c4, d6, f4, knight f6, knight f3. This allows a pin on g4, which is not only annoying, but it's hard to deal with. Instead, d3, because after bishop g4, knight g e2. And if knight d4 anyways, h3. This is very subtle, because now he'll have to capture on e2. So bishop takes e2, knight takes e2, knight to h5. And it looks like white's very weak on the king side. But what do you think happened next? Well, white played knight takes d4, queen to h4 check, g3. Queen takes g3. If knight takes g3, then knight f3, winning the piece. So queen takes g3, king f1, knight takes f4. Bishop takes f4, because after all, there is no check really by the black queen. So queen takes f4 check, and now queen to f3, winning the piece, because if e takes d4, then queen takes f4. So this actually happened in a master game, Gorescu Socorina, and this is a game that I will be remembering for sure because I will be playing the Vienna more often. It's just a fascinating opening to play. However, I played the worst move in the game, which was knight f6, and so bishop g4, d3, knight d4. I had spent 3.5 minutes on this move, perplexed, but I had to deal with the worst position now. Bishop e3, and he played the worst knight takes f3. But after bishop takes f3, g takes f3, knight to h5, white has a long game ahead of him. So knight takes f3, g takes f3 just gives me a tempo, and now he thought he had e takes f4, but then I had f takes g4, f takes e3, g5, knight to d7. So maybe my opponent thought, oh, I could defend this position, and expected queen to f3, because after that he has knight to e5, of course, forking the queen and bishop, although it's not the end of the world. But my point on g5 is weak, and he's going to play knight e5 anyways. So h4, knight e5, and now what would you play here? Take a second. Did you play queen to e2? This is a positional move, because after knight takes c4, d takes c4, apparently giving white double pawns, but this makes white formidable in the center, preventing any d5 ideas for a very long time, and giving white an outpost on d5, easily winning positionally. So black's bishop is good, but it's not active. So he tries with g6, rook f1, queen d7, queenside castle. Now, black could queenside castle here, and that's what I would recommend. Just get out the way, get out the middle. You have nothing better, or I'm going to start breaking open the middle with e5 or c5. Bishop g7, and although I could play c5 now, I decided not, because bishop takes c3 would be bad. So knight d5. And now, a blunder. Queenside castling was absolutely necessary. But he played queen to a4, and now knight takes c7, king to d7. So here's the first instance of always looking for better moves. Do you just take the rook and call it a day? Well, no. Obviously, you have rook takes f7. So that's what was played. And now, do you take the rook? Because then you could also take the bishop? Well, no, still. You're in a position where you can end the game fast because the king is exposed. And so, how would you go about being clinical in this position? Take another second and think. The move played was rook takes d6. So if you take a look, I spent 4.5 minutes on this move. I knew I was going to play it from a very long time, but I had to calculate every consequence of this move because I didn't want to miss a single thing. So king takes d6. I did not calculate king to c5 in the game because that's not something that's absolutely necessary to calculate. Although he probably should have done that because I was now in time trouble, and that's something I didn't calculate, right? Like, do I play... I would actually have probably played queen takes e3 here. And so we have something very similar to the game, right? So I want him to take my rook. So king takes d6, queen to d3, and now king c5. And I had actually wanted him to play king c6 because I had the variation. I mean, of course, you can skewer the king and queen with queen to d7 and win the queen, right? And yeah, that's something that's, I guess, okay. But I wasn't going to spend 4.5 minutes looking at that, right? However, it may have been a better use of my time, practically speaking. And then I could just do the mate study puzzle afterwards. That would have been very smart. So yes, queen to d7 is the practical move. However, I had played queen to d5. So queen to d5. 1 second. Yeah, because that's what I had calculated. Queen to d5. So king to b6, and now queen to d6. King to a5 was the best move. If queen c6, then queen to b5, queen to b4, sorry, queen to b5, and then queen takes b5, checkmate. So he has to play this, followed by queen c5, and now b5. So this is a very interesting position. I learned about something called damming from Kosteniuk's studies on Chess King. By playing b4, you now prevent the king's escape towards b4, and now when the queen takes, you basically end up with checkmating on a7. So that's the idea. However, first you have to do something like knight takes b5 for that to happen. So it's a waiting move, right? Because you're clearing the way to a7. So suppose he plays rook hb8, which I don't think he has anything better, or a6, which probably would have been best. So that's actually a good move to look at, except I could just go back and forth and take the queen again. So suppose he does this, then you do rook takes a7, rook takes a7, queen takes a7, and the game ends. So king c5, knight to d6, king to b6, queen to d6, and just as we had analyzed before, queen to c6, queen to b4, king to a6, knight to c7, queen takes c7. Now this is not where you take the queen, right? So I was talking about this just a moment ago. Yes, I would have played queen d7 and queen takes queen and studied if there was a checkmate there later. Definitely would do that in a tournament because it's the easiest. And I don't sense any danger with that pawn on e3, really. I could just skewer the king and capture it. So, and play rook to f1 to prevent any back rank ideas. Really, there's no danger. So, queen to b5. So, in summary, yes, I would have taken the queen rather than look for a very beautiful checkmate like this. I'm very happy that I found this beautiful checkmate. But I would only do this if I really had the time. But it's very risky to do this in a short game of like 20 plus 0 or 25 plus 0. I would highly just recommend taking the queen in a position like, like this one here, right? So he goes there, and then you take the queen, and he's gonna get checkmated pretty soon, right? And maybe not immediately, but he's going to have a long day at the office, right? This is very easy to checkmate. I just did this without even calculating anything. So that's all. And I hope you enjoyed this video about being practical. If you sense that you have a low amount of time, definitely go for material if he does not have any counter chance, which he doesn't. And if you do have the time, which I sensed that I did in the game, which is why I did this checkmate, then go for the checkmate. So it's all about how you feel. Whatever you do, don't doubt yourself, and stick to that conviction, because the moment you doubt yourself, I've lost every single game I've done that, when I'm like, let me play this, but then I don't play it and I lose, and like I have spectators around me frustrated because they thought I was gonna play the right move. It's not a fun feeling. Never doubt yourself, because it's just bad. So I'll see you in the next one.